Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gustavo, Youth Programs Manager at USTA Eastern, and I have the pleasure of hosting today's panel discussion on the state of youth sports. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the biggest challenges as well as opportunities this pandemic has presented across all sports. And we will also take a deep dive in other very relevant subjects such as community engagement, coaching education, technology innovation, and the integration of the ADM, the American Development Model, which emphasizes on multi-sport and age-appropriate play. And before I introduce our guests, we'd love to show you a short clip just to give you a little taste of what this session is about. It's always great to see other kids having fun and playing other sports, and also always interesting to hear the perspective from other sport organizations. So to do that, we have an incredible panel of guests with immense experience in the sports industry, and particularly the youth sports landscape. We have Jane Benson. She is the Vice President of Youth Programs and Marketing at the New York Roadrunners. Welcome, Jane. Joining us as well, we have Brian Walsh. Brian is the Director of Youth Sports at New York City Football Club. Welcome, Brian. And joining us too, we have Rick Nadeau. Rick is the Vice President of Social Impact and Fan Engagement at the New York Rangers. And he's also a member of the NHL Youth Advisory Board. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you.
Happy to have you all here. We're very excited. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I'd like to start by asking the three of you, if you could take a moment to tell our audience a little bit more about your role in your organization and give us some insight on what your day-to-day looks like. And I'd like to start with you, Jane.
Great. Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm the Vice President of Youth and Community Programs at the New York Roadrunners. So I oversee all the programs that we provide into the community for free, and obviously all in support of our mission. So as an organization, we set out to inspire and support people through running. So our youth program is called Rising New York Roadrunners, and that's really our flagship program. But we also have programs for older adults. We have a program called Striders. We work with young women to build the confidence and skills required to run and stay healthy and active for life. That program is called Run for the Future. And then we support runners and walkers really of all ages and abilities and experience levels. And this program takes place in local parks all over the boroughs in New York City, and that's called Open Run. So overseeing all those programs and coordinating the teams who are really out there, really making sure that we're giving back to the community and again, supporting our mission in New York City.
That's wonderful. Brian?
Hey everyone, Brian Walsh here. I'm the Director of Youth Programs at New York City Football Club. My role at New York City Football Club, I oversee the Youth Programs Department, which is one of 3 youth departments within the club. So we have our city in the community, we have our academy, and we also have youth programs. My day to day is basically making sure I'm providing opportunities for players in the talent identification aspect in terms of giving them opportunity and pathways to develop their pathways as players. And also coaches too. So if I have coaches who are really good, how do I develop them and be better coaches to impact more soccer players in the community? And also, along with Talent ID, a big part of my role is fan development. So every time a player comes to one of our programs, I want to give them the best possible experience and in turn become fans of NYCFC. A big part of my day today is basically quality control, making sure the environment that we create at each one of our programs is the best it could be. Also communication to parents and players, making sure it's timely, making sure that it's professional, and also making sure the quality of the coaches that are delivering our practice sessions is the best it can be.
And Rick?
Yeah, I'm Vice President of Social Impact and Fan Engagement for the New York Rangers, and that's just a fancy way of saying that I wear a lot of different hats. Oversee everything from community engagement, our charitable and philanthropic efforts, our alumni association, and our relationship with our former players, all the different touch points that fans have in and around our games, whether it's photos on the ice, following a game at the Garden, or being able to watch a Ranger practice. But I think the biggest part of my role, and one of the ones that I enjoy most, is the work that I do in the youth hockey landscape. And really my day-to-day is really all about inspiring, igniting, and fueling a passion for the sport, and using hockey as a way of positively impacting our community. And much like Jane and Brian, every day is about creating access. It's about finding ways of making sure kids have access to sports and are able to use sports to enrich their lives and build invaluable life skills. And every day it brings a little something different, especially over the course of the last year. But the focus is still the same. It's about opening doors and giving kids the access to those experiences that are so important to all of us.
Yeah, and I think you all have a lot in common, including a busy schedule for sure. And another thing we all have in common, I think, is the challenges we've had during this pandemic. To say that this past year has been difficult is probably an understatement. It has forced us to change the way we do things internally with our staff, our colleagues, forced us to change the way we interact with our members, customers, and also the way we run our programs and our events. So my question to you is, what has been the biggest challenge in your sport and your organization, and how have you been able to adapt? And let's start with you, Rick.
Yeah, well, I think there's two obvious ones. One is just like many organizations, many of us are dealing with, is just the challenges of the pandemic and operating budget and staffing levels. And we lost two very, very important members of our team to staffing cuts this summer. And so the rest of the team is adjusting and dealing with that and taking on new responsibilities. And that's been a huge challenge for all of us, is getting in a lot of ways the same amount of work done with fewer people. And we're certainly not alone in that. And I think the other biggest challenge, and not unique to the Rangers and Madison Square Garden, is just trying to make decisions and move things forward with so many variables and unknowns. And it's forced us to build a lot of the things that we do on the fly, and trying to make educated decisions about what to do next, knowing that things could change at any moment. And I think that has been an enormous challenge. And it's kind of reared its head across all kinds of things over the course of the last year. So those are the two that stick out: the staffing impact, and then obviously the challenges of dealing with blinders on.
Absolutely. And Brian, since you are also part of team sport, what has been the biggest challenge for you guys?
Yeah, just like everyone else is dealing with shutdowns and not having access to facilities to run programming. So how to be creative to bring our programs to kids that can't physically get to our programs. So for us, we have adapted, we pivoted, we designed and built out a platform that enabled us to bring our programs to kids remotely, safely in their own homes, whether you're in a Brooklyn apartment or you're in a farm upstate New York. The programs we designed and brought to those kids, they were able to do them. So for us, is the challenge is like everyone else, but just trying to adapt, trying to be creative, and just trying to create access and fans for our programs.
And Jane, I know running, even though it could be considered an individual sport, because you can do it, you can just go and run. All your programs and your events, your meets, they have a lot of people, a lot of kids. What has been the biggest challenge for you?
Yeah, I mean, same theme, right? The COVID really brought everything to a grinding halt last spring. We had like a really exciting spring planned. We work a lot with schools, and the shutdown of schools had a massive impact on our Rising New York Roadrunner program, which is very sort of dependent upon physical educators and schools to get involved in and get their schools involved in. So that hit us very hard. In addition to all the races that we put on this spring, that just could not happen. So like Brian, we really sort of reached out to our partners and to our what we call our program leads in schools and asked them, like, what can we do to help, right? And we pivoted very, very quickly to digital. We luckily had some really great online resources that really weren't front and center in our program, but we were able to sort of bring those to the front and really leverage them and put them out into the hands of educators and into the hands of families. And we created a lot of video as well to start to supplement all those activities. So leaning into digital was definitely the sort of how we overcame that challenge. On the racing side, we started creating virtual races where we allowed kids to come on. It could be their parent or their program lead, and sign them up for a virtual race. So we had a series of those where kids could pledge to run a certain distance. There was a downloadable bib that they could decorate, and they had certificates of completion that they could sort of celebrate their accomplishment at the end. So it was all around sort of, looking at what was happening around us, talking to and networking to figure out how best we fill some of those gaps and overcome those barriers.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I think we're all forced to adapt, and hopefully some of those positive things are here to stay. Even when it's tough, I always like to look at the bright side and the positives. And despite all these challenges, there have also been opportunities. In tennis, we're fortunate to be considered a social distancing sport. So actually, some of our clubs and providers have seen very big enrollment numbers that they haven't seen in a while. Also, according to the Tennis Industry Association equipment census, racket sales for kids at the entry level saw an increase of 40% in the last quarter. That's compared to last year. And also the Physical Activity Council reported that 10% of the US population was playing tennis. Compared to 2019, that's an increase of 50% almost. So that is something we at the USTA see as a huge opportunity, and we're gonna try to capitalize on that. And I'd like to ask you, what are some of the opportunities that your sport and organization has identified? And I'll start with you, Jane, since you mentioned some of the virtual. Is that something that you feel is an opportunity to engage with more people?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we sort of got thrown into this space, so it sort of accelerated our need to really figure out ways to expand our scope and our scale to reach more of our community. But this sort of hybrid approach where we will have a digital offering combined with an in-person offering is here to stay. It's really exciting to think about what it can look like on the other side of this, because we will be able to offer even more than we did before. The video sort of production has been a great asset for us, because what we have found is there's a great need for video and video instruction. And so that is something that has definitely turned into an opportunity for us. So continuing to really get out there with great video and great instruction that can be delivered through technology. And I'll say the other opportunity is really around partnerships. I think the moment forced us all to sort of talk to each other and not really look at sort of our competitors, but really look as more sort of comrades and colleagues to say, like, how do we serve these communities who are in a really difficult position? How do we do that better in a way that's not overwhelming? And so, we found great partners around us who, we work together with to get really sort of packaged up great content and ideas so that we were simplifying the way that schools and educators and families could engage with us to keep their kids having fun and keep those brain breaks going and keep them active and energized, which we all know during the pandemic was something that was really a challenge, right, for kids who were really bouncing off their four walls.
Yeah, and actually, we have seen that firsthand, those partnerships that you mentioned. We've been invited by you guys, the New York Roadrunners, to be part of the Jamboree a couple of years in a row. So we're excited to be back once it's safe to do so. What about you, Brian? What are some opportunities that you have identified?
Yeah, just like Jane, I think the virtual world will be here for a long time, whether that's hopefully not as much as the outdoor sports, because there's nothing beats playing, especially soccer outdoor and grass, right? But I think there's definitely an opportunity for us to grow our virtual programming. It'll be hopefully a hybrid role in our delivery of programs. What we found that was very successful for us was the platform that we built was gamified, and it was very intuitive. So the kids would be awarded points for completing challenges or completing tasks, and they could redeem those points for NYCFC experiences and prizes. So that was really helpful for us, and that came down from me being a stay-at-home dad. Not stay-at-home dad. When my kids were here for homeschooling, I was doing homeschooling with my daughter, and she was 6 at the time, and the virtual learning and the virtual world when it first happened last March, it was extremely difficult for parents to navigate work, homeschooling, and so we said to ourselves, if we're going to do this, we have to make it as simple, as intuitive as possible, gamify it, and make sure the kids can give the parents a little respite and just play their sports independently at home, remotely. And that's what we did, and that's what's been really successful for us, and enabled us to not only reach our fan base here in New York, but we had over, I think, 20 states represented in our programs during the pandemic, and I think over 15 different countries participated in our program. So our reach now is, we're getting fans and youth players all over the globe participating in our program. So it was definitely an eye opener, and it's definitely something we're going to continue to do. But hopefully we can just play outdoors as soon as possible.
Yeah, we definitely will. I think we all hope so. What about you, Rick?
I think for the sake of not being redundant, I mean, Jane and Brian bring up a ton of great points, and we certainly have leaned heavily on technology, and I think are going to be looking for ways to bring the live experience to more families at home who can't travel to our events or be a part of it live. I think the other part that's been interesting, especially in a sport like hockey that has inherently had the reputation in a lot of ways, justifiably so, for being expensive and inaccessible to a lot of folks, is really the chance to reset the deck, right? And as tournaments can't operate, as teams can't travel, as programs are not having as much access to ice, the simplification of the experience this year and really bringing it back down to basics, the importance and families focus on just getting the kids out there rather than all the bells and whistles attached to youth sports experience, I think allows us to revisit the model and how it's built and how it's executed. Not to say that the deep experience isn't needed on some level. The travel programs and the tournaments obviously add value to the youth sports experience, but having different options and entry points into the game, I think there's an opportunity for us to sort of recalibrate things. And I think that's an opportunity that probably wasn't initially uncovered as people are trying to adjust to the new kind of state of being. But I do think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to revisit some of the challenges in youth sports and find new ways of packaging and delivering the experience for families, not just in hockey, but across the board, but certainly in sports like hockey, where expenses and access have been a challenge for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all on the same page, and for all of us, our sports, engaging with the community plays a key role. One of USTA's strategic objectives is to attract, engage, and retain new and diverse generations of players. And I know you all your organizations are very, very involved in the community as well. Rick, I know you developed non-traditional partnerships, and you have partnerships with third-party organizations. Can you talk to us a little bit about why is that important, and how do you benefit of these unusual relationships?
Yeah, well, most things, right? It's power in numbers, and so what we try to do is partner with organizations that bring skills and resources to the table that we don't have. And so, as an example, one of the things that we've been really successful doing over the years is partnering with the existing ice rinks. They're privately owned, they're publicly owned, but privately operated. We've got all different sorts of rink relationships. But rather than building ice rinks and operating ice rinks, which is a specialty of ours until you get to the big venues like Madison Square Garden, it's more about what value can we add to the existing infrastructure, where we can be complementary to what's already there and add value, and where can our rink partners bring resources and value to what we're trying to accomplish, so that we are really working in partnership and building something that's more valuable. And so, that's something that's been a focus of ours for the 13 years I've been at the Garden. We're currently partnered with 50 plus rinks across the tri-state area, and I think connected to that in a lot of ways is the New York tri-state area is the fastest growing hockey area in the country, adding more kids to the sport over the course of the last 3 to 5 years than any other part in the country in sheer numbers. And so I think it's a reflection of the value of those partnerships, and the Rangers working alongside the local rink operators to do things that neither could do on their own, working independently of one another.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned local, and local in the community is so important. And talking about that, Jane, I know you guys have a youth ambassador program that is very interesting. You have kids being mentored in the community. Can you talk to us about that program?
Yeah, sure. So the program was started back in 2012 with just a couple of kids, but really the goal was very simple. We wanted to help kids develop their communication skills. So really work with them on their writing, on their speaking, how to engage an audience, so that they could give effective presentations, and they could conduct interviews and give public speeches. And one of the things that we do with them is help them to develop and share their running stories. And we ask them about the role that running has in their lives. And they create these amazing inspirational stories, and they're filled with like so much wisdom that even as an adult, you're just completely blown away and inspired by them. And, obviously that ties really nicely to our mission, right? About inspiring people to run. So they go through a 6-week program with, some professional staff, and it culminates with a graduation where they are able to actually put all what they learned into practice, and they present to the organization. And then really it just prepares them to speak on our behalf, right? So we have them talk to the media, they attend press events, they take interviews with local media outlets, they come to our events and meet with members of the running industry. So it's really a wonderful program. We again had to pivot to digital when everything that got shut down, because usually it wasn't in-person training. But kids are so resilient, and they really took to the digital platforms in terms of their instruction. They've been taking media interviews on Zoom. And then we've really gotten them involved in all of this video production that I talked about earlier. So they've created videos for us to promote our programs on social media. They created a Black Lives Matter advocacy video. They created a video in celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. So we've really kind of taken this idea and tried to, again, pivot to the moment that we're in to continue to give them this opportunity to learn really great lifelong skills.
That's great. I think you've seen the positive impact in the community from that program. And Brian, you are also very involved. You actually have a program called City in the Community with a few different initiatives. Can you talk to us about some of those initiatives?
Yeah, so City in the Community, which is our charity arm at NYCFC. Youth programs, the Academy and CITC work together strategically throughout the year to make sure we're impacting as many youth soccer players as possible at all levels. CITC, I think over 5,000 kids in New York City are receiving free soccer. And then one of the things I'm most proud about, although I'm not directly involved in the day-to-day, is the fact that CITC pledged to build 50 mini pitches in New York City before the end of 2021. And this year, the 50th pitch will be built. So I'm sure some of your audience or yourself have seen some of these pitches around New York City. Say 50 blue pitches. Well, almost 50 blue pitches, but we'll have the 50th built by the end of this year. So if you see kids are playing on them, not just soccer, they're playing all different types of sports on those pitches. So it's great for obviously the soccer community, but also the local sports community to see those spaces being utilized all throughout New York City.
No, that's very impressive. I think that's great, and it's a perfect segue for the next topic that I want to talk to you about, which is the ADM, the American Development Model. And for those who are listening and are not as familiar with it, the ADM is a concerted effort between the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee and its 50 national governing bodies to apply long-term development principles and serve as a guide to parents and coaches through that journey. And the main objectives are, reducing early specialization, promoting multi-sport, and also increasing physical activity in general in children. And I know hockey has been a big supporter of the ADM, Rick. Why do you think hockey was one of the first, if not the first, who supported it, and why is it so important for you guys?
Yeah, I don't know that they were the first to use the principles that they were building in some ways with the small area games and some of the practices, because Little League and other sports have always reduced the size of the playing surface long before hockey did. But I think what was important and what was groundbreaking with what USA Hockey was leading was really just understanding what was working, what wasn't working in terms of getting kids to have success on the ice and to want to continue building skills and making sure what was being taught was really setting these kids up for learning and growing at the right times. And instead of asking the kids to adjust to the lessons that were being taught, adjusting the lessons to where the kids were at in their development at a certain point. And so, the playing spaces and playing cross ice instead of forcing kids to skate 200 feet up and down. So if you ever saw a hockey game with, 5-6-year-olds out there playing against another 5, it's like, the fastest kid with the puck is the one who's going to score all the goals, and everybody else is like a swarm of bees trying to catch up with them. And I think changing the game and the dynamic of how the game was played gets all the kids engaged and feeling energized about the experience and having success and wanting to come back and having fun. And so, I'm oversimplifying it, but I think what has happened in hockey is you're seeing greater experiences with the kids, which is leading to more fun and more smiles, which is leading them to coming back, and USA Hockey's retention numbers increasing. Their membership has been increasing for the better part of a decade. And I think the ADM has been a big part of that, and making sure that they have a vision that everybody is following, so that there's consistency from program to program, from state to state, and parents know what they're getting themselves into and their synergy. So, I think you're seeing now with the success of US Hockey, even at the international scale now, you're seeing other national governing bodies saying there's something to this, and we got to try to take some of these principles and bring them into our sports, and hopefully we'll continue to see success across the board.
Yeah, that's great, and I think the more sport governing bodies and programs start applying it and introducing them, the better athletes we're gonna see. And Jane, you were telling me earlier how the New York Road Runners went through a bit of a restructure a couple of years ago and try to introduce some of these principles that are part of the ADM. Can you tell us why that was done and what was the reasoning behind it? And are there any benefits you've seen already?
Yeah, so we actually revamped our youth program back in 2017 and launched it for that academic year. So, our in-school and sort of after-school, out-of-school program was really a running program and a running only program. It was called Mighty Milers, and there was a program called Young Runners, but really it was about just running laps and getting that distance in. But sort of realizing, the importance of ADM and physical literacy, we teamed up with Sport for Life and launched a brand new program, and that's the Rising New York Roadrunners program, which was really focused on physical activities and resources that build kids' fundamental movement skills and incorporate SEL, social emotional learning, to prepare kids not only to become strong runners when it is developmentally appropriate to do so, but also to make them successful in other sports, right? Which was definitely a part of the goal there. And so all these activities and the program that we created around them, they're all tied to Shape Physical Literacy curriculum and the stages of athletic development and skill level. So we're able to ensure that, they're completely appropriate. And then on the racing side, we also made some changes. So we created a new staged approach, again, to reflect appropriate age and distance and developmental readiness for both like competition and timing. And so it really sort of restructured the way we thought about races, where we're combining running and what the traditional race with physical activities, right? So it gives all kids of different abilities and ages a really great experience. I heard the word fun. We want to make it fun and a fun experience for kids, no matter what level they're at. And it's such a critical factor to motivation, isn't it? Like if you can get kids leaving a program in school or out of school, or leaving an event super jazzed up and having a great time, it's really going to motivate them to continue to, stay active. And it's something that sort of will stick with them for life.
Yeah, I know fun is definitely key. And the good thing is that running is really needed for all sports, really. Probably except swimming, maybe, but definitely everybody can improve with taking some of your programs. And Brian, I want to ask you, what do you think we can do better as sport organizations to educate coaches, parents, children, not only on the benefits of multi-sport play, but also the dangers of early specialization and burnout? What do you think we can do better?
Well, firstly, I grew up in Ireland, and in Ireland, in the time I grew up, the coaches embraced multi-sports, like golf, soccer, Gaelic football, hurling, rugby was all embraced in the town I grew up in. And that helped me in my career, as in my soccer career. And I probably didn't know at the time, but it wasn't until you reflect on your youth and the games you played, how it had an positive impact on you in other areas of the sport that you've chosen at the elite level. So I think for us, especially on this panel here, is to be the example, right? Is to educate parents, to educate coaches and players of the benefits of different sports. Because if you look at hockey, you look at the multiple transitions in hockey, in a game of hockey, and how that could benefit a basketball player or a soccer player, all right? Or tennis, hand-eye coordination of a tennis player, how that can benefit a goalkeeper in soccer. So there's multiple ways, multi-sports can help all athletes. So it's important for us as leaders to embrace it and to show the benefits to all players. I think what's also important too is unstructured free play. Is letting kids embrace the game they're playing themselves, so they can learn, they can improvise, they can be creative on the ball or on the ice, or if they're running. I observe a lot of coaching in New York. When I say coach, it's mostly soccer, but it's too structured. It's too organized in a sense, but kids need to be able to get out there and play themselves and figure out the problems with their friends. So as long with multi-sports, definitely unstructured free play is something that we're big on here at NYCFC, and we're going to roll out a lot of programs this coming year that will embrace unstructured free play. But yeah, as long as the kids are having fun, they'll keep coming back. So,
and you touch upon something very important, coaching, right? The importance of coaching, and I think at the end of the day, the coach is the one who has the direct interaction with the kid in the track, in the pitch, in the hockey ring, or the tennis court. So for us is definitely a big priority to start getting more younger coaches, diverse coaches. Brian, what are your efforts in engaging young and diverse coaches?
Yeah, so the first thing we look for is personality, right? So we can get them the credentials they need. If they're willing to work with us, we'll work with coaches. So for us, all our coaches are ambassadors. They're inspirational, they're leaders, they're role models. So we look, and we also want to hire local coaches. So coaches that come from the communities and the neighborhoods that we're delivering these programs. Because we want the kids that go to these programs to see their neighbor or their cousin being the head coach or being the person delivering the practice session. So it's important for us to find those local coaches. And how we do that is we have a network, obviously, of professionals to help us get those coaches, but also we connect with community leaders, with youth clubs and organizations to get us in front of as many possible candidates, if you want to call them that, possible. So we can get them out to the public to deliver soccer. And that's been usually successful for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and a lot of times, ex-players can be really good coaches, although they do need to educate themselves and go through a coaching pathway and certifications. Rick, what in your experience, what has helped you guys with that transition from ex-players to become really good coaches? What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, well, if we're considering ex-players, like folks like myself too, that didn't play at any
level, yeah, ex-college players.
We're talking about, anyways. I think it's just like the kids, right? We've got to set coaches up to be successful, and you can't just throw somebody out there and put them in charge of the safety and experience of 20 to 30 kids without giving them the tools to deliver a great experience. And so for us, it's working with organizations like USA Hockey, who can provide sort of the X's and O's training for coaches and how to set up structure practices the right way. And to Brian's point, not only provide structure, but also be able to step back and let kids learn and grow and do the things on the ice and on the court and on the field, so they can learn and fail on their own. But I think it's the other things too. It's the things that maybe are more important now than ever. Organizations like You Can Play, like Rise, and like Positive Coaching Alliance, who can come in and offer complementary training to help arm coaches to deal with different situations, conflict resolution, how to make sure that they're coaching to not only the players who athletically are a little bit more advanced, but also the kids who may not have as much success, and making sure that they see the wins and they're constantly being challenged and learning and growing and feel like they're part of a team. And organizations like Rise, who can help with just general acceptance and inclusion, and building an environment where everybody feels welcomed and to be a part of a healthy environment. So I think all of those things are important. And I think when you're trying to help players transition into the world of coaching, it's about providing all of that, right? And not just putting them out there and saying with a whistle and a clipboard, have at it. We want to make sure everybody's set up for success, and I think there's a lot that we can do as leaders and organizers to create that.
Absolutely, you're totally right, and we need to be there for them. And besides those certifications, and what are your thoughts, Jane, on ways we can further educate coaches to have success, not only at the high performance level, but also at the grassroots level? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, at least on our program, we have a very broad definition of a coach, because our program is really dependent upon what we call program leads. And that could be a physical educator, that could be a parent who's coming and acting as a coach or a track coach. And even this academic year, classroom teachers are coaches. Because a lot of physical activity and physical education is actually taking place in a classroom when kids are in person, but not going to the gym, right? They're doing everything in their classroom. So this year in particular has been an opportunity for us to, as you say, quote unquote, educate. Those activities I talked about earlier, they all come with very detailed instructions. And we actually modified a lot of those for classroom use, so that a teacher could use those activities for a brain break, let's say, during the day. And then we have, you know, a lot of the sort of traditional professional development opportunities that I'm sure others have, videos, webinars, taped webinars that we provide our program leads access into. We have a newsletter that goes out. We have sort of a quote unquote coach's corner. So one of our staff, Mike Tenebruso, he put some tips and strategies in there to keep those little, what I call sort of just in time professional development moments. And then we use social media. You know, we sort of lean into our community to share with each other. So we, you know, where we can push out content, we'll do that, but we encourage our community to do that with each other and share best practice of what's working and what's not working. And that's been really sort of fun to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned something super important, coaching not only the actual sport, but playing a positive role in their character development as well. And I think that's something that all of our organizations aspire to do. And one of my favorite quotes from Arthur Ashe: "Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can." That's at the USTA Tennis Center. It's down there, and I think it's super important for us as organization and also individuals to try to do what we can with what we have. So my next question for the three of you, I'd like you all to jump in, is what are the ways in which you are incentivizing and motivating not only young players but young coaches to continue with their development and also instill these positive values, good sportsmanship, respect, professionalism? What are the ways that you are accomplishing that? And yeah, I'd like to hear from the three of you. Anybody want to?
Yeah, I can start off if that's okay. So, yeah, so that's everything what we do. That we try and encourage players to have great values, right? To be a good soccer player, you need to be good on the pitch. You need to be good off the pitch. So we, in our grassroots programs, we have values that is effort, it's courage, it's teamwork, respect, and we reward kids who show that in every one of our practice sessions. So when I say courage, I don't mean who's the bravest, who can jump off the highest wall. It's who's able to get the ball and dribble and take people on. Even if you fail, get the ball back and try again. So that's the courage we're looking for at the grassroots level. And when we see that and we recognize that in our practice sessions, we make sure we give those kids shout outs, and kids learn pretty quickly. Oh my God, coach likes that. That's the effort he wants. That's the attitude he's looking for. So that's been usually successful for us. But also on the elite level, we have non-negotiables that all our elite players in our academy have to abide by. And that's the desire to compete. It's to have work ethic. It's the willingness to learn, like how coachable are you? It's focus and it's bravery. So, and then again, they're constantly reinforced, and that being a good player on the pitch and off the pitch, using those values is everything that NYCFC strives to achieve at youth soccer players.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, we actually incorporated social emotional learning competencies in our program starting this fall. As you know, it was sort of a very sort of hot area as kids were going back into school and experiencing a lot of trauma over the previous months, that educators were using a competency framework called CASTLE to really help kids reflect and to sort of build those relationships up again, and sort of encouraging kids to become self-aware. So we actually took that framework and we developed prompts or questions, self-reflecting questions, and we incorporated those into our activities. So a program lead who was, taking a physical activity from our Play Builder online resource had a set of prompts or questions that they could pose to the kids, right? Either before an activity started or during an activity or really after play. And really what it helped to do is get kids to sort of build up those critical skills and behaviors. So, we're pretty proud of that work and sort of creating this tie between the CASTLE framework and the SHAPE standards, and really building it as an essential component into our program.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I was to say, just quickly building off of what Jane and Brian have shared, I think, one of the important things too is, and we all want it, right? We all want to know what success looks like and what's expected of us, is laying that out at the outset, not only for the players, but the parents as well, and for the coaches, of where are the benchmarks, where are the milestones, what are the skills that they should be developing at certain points throughout the season, what are the expectations, so that it leads, get everybody going down the right path and rowing in the same direction. And then, as Brian mentioned, reinforcing when they're doing it the right way, so that you're positively reinforcing the behaviors that you're hoping for. But I think the biggest thing with youth sports is you want to make sure that everybody walking in the door at the beginning knows exactly what's going to happen and when and why you're doing the certain things. I think it eliminates a lot of the anxiety, a lot of parents and kids coming up with what the expectation should be on their own. And sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not. So the more upfront you can be, the more transparent you can be with your goals and what the expectations are. I think it just sets everybody up for success. And I think that's a big part of this as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's great to hear that all of our organizations really have a focus on character development, because it's so important to create good athletes, but also good people, right? So for this next portion, I actually want to bring in my colleague, Elena. She selected some of the best questions that we received from the audience. And so she'll be asking you. Elena is our player development manager. So Elena.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to listen to you, how you navigate and innovate through these challenging times. We're a lot into tennis, and it's so nice to hear how other sports are dealing with all this. So we went through some of the questions that we received from our audience, and I'm going to throw some of you one by one. I'm going to start with Rick, who has been like most of the times third here, not sure why. So we're going to put him on the first spot. Rick, so NHL and the New York Rangers have a program called Future Goals that supports schools and integrates STEM. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, it's a STEM-based program that's run in partnership with the 31, soon to be 32 teams with Seattle, the NHL and the Players Association. And really it's introducing the sport of hockey through STEM-based concepts and using STEM and access to classrooms as a way of not only teaching kids and giving schools important resources through these online curriculum supplements, but finding a way to make it fun through sports, right? And you just never know what's going to get a kid to pay attention in class, and maybe learning about kinetic and energy and motion, and you get out into all that stuff with puck movement and angles with pucks bouncing off walls. Maybe it gets somebody to pay attention a little bit more in school and helps them learn. And so that's really what it is. It's about providing important resources to schools, but doing it through the lens of hockey, and hopefully bringing hockey to kids in classrooms where maybe hockey isn't top of mind. So it's a lot of fun.
It's great to hear. I mean, this is a super awesome innovation, and we do certain things in schools and trying to integrate as well, and hopefully going forward we can use some of that, integrating STEM more as much as we can. We spoke about technology quite a bit, and especially in these times, this is probably one of the top priorities of how to get content, how to engage kids with technology. Jane, you spoke a lot about video, Brian about gaming. I'm gonna put this out there and jump in whoever wants to, but basically I want to dive in a little bit more on, let's say, Brian, what kind of gaming concepts, what did you do? Did you do it on your own? Did you use a third party? How did that happen? Because a lot of organizations, I'm sure, are like wondering, with budgets and how they can manage to make it more kind of engaging with the kids, right? So how did you do that, and what did you use?
Yeah, sorry, you're on mute there. Yeah, so because we pivot really quickly, we use our internal resources to get to a point of where we could, but then we had to go outside to get a little help to expedite the delivery of the platform. But the platform itself was, as I mentioned earlier, it was so important for me to make sure it was intuitive, because we wanted to give parents a break from the virtual learning. We wanted to give them a few minutes themselves while their kids are playing, but we also wanted to make sure it was gamified. And kids like to win prizes. Kids like to see where they stack in their group, and it was that they would complete the tasks and not just go through the motions. But when we incentivize players to win a signed jersey, to do X number of activities, they're going to do it. And so it has been, and I think it will be for a long time, be a useful tool for us, and not just to deliver virtual training to local kids, but national and international kids. We'll also use it as a tool for education too. So now we can have these kids join. It's individual, and they have an individual login. They have individual dashboards, so we can put individual content to each player, whatever level they are, that they can do at home. But yeah, I can happily share if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can share.
We'll connect. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, thank you. And Jane, Rick, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about the video and all this great content. One of the things that we realized is actually there was so much that in some cases our program leads didn't know where to start. So it prompted this idea of what we call a virtual challenge. It's not quite as gamified as Brian's platform. It's actually fairly low tech, but a wonderful sort of innovation that our team came up with, which is essentially creating pathways through that content through some sort of virtual challenge. So for example, the one that we ran last fall was called the Coast to Coast. And essentially we mapped an activity to every state, and we challenged kids to take a state, and we had like fun little facts associated with that state as well. So they sort of learned something about that state, completed the activity, and then they could sort of mark it off on this sort of chart that we created. So it was a great thing for kids to, families to do on their own, to sort of keep movement as part of an everyday routine, but also ended up being a great tool for teachers to use in distance learning, and really help them, again, to motivate kids to keep moving throughout the day and get them to learn a bit about geography. So things like that, which were fairly low tech, but provided really nice pathways through the content. So yeah, that's what we did.
Great. Rick, anything to add here?
No, not a lot. I think it's obviously the last year has forced us all to look at technology in a new way. And sometimes with a smile on our face, and sometimes just, enough's enough, right? But I think using it intelligently, I think what Brian and Jane are talking about doing, it's amazing to hear what's being done. And I think it's doing it in a way that technology isn't an inconvenience or a hurdle. It's just a blended part of the experience, and it's not a barrier, right? Like, I think we see like Zoom fatigue now. It's just like it's got to be an additive part of the experience in delivering something that you can't get anywhere else, or it becomes a chore, and we don't want it to become a chore, right? So I think what Jane and Brian shared is just really amazing stuff, and I think there's a lot of organizations trying to replicate that success.
Yeah. And another question for you, actually. Your role as an NHL Youth Advisory Board, can you speak a little bit more?
Yeah, that's just because I'm old. So
that's an excuse.
Yeah. So they lean on the old guy to help share learnings and expertise. It's the nature of our business, right? It's there's not a lot of us in the sports industry with as few hair or as gray hair as me, and so there's a lot of young staff that are leading the charge and bringing fresh ideas and new ideas, and I think it's just it's at points just helping to provide experience, I think, is helpful to them as they're building things in their markets. And so I think my tenure with the Rangers over the last decade, and then before that 10 years in the ice rink business, I think those two sort of perspectives can help a lot, and at least I hope it helps. And so my role with the NHL and sitting on the advisory board is just helping to shape best practices or help guide the conversation, the direction of some of the initiatives we're doing that will hopefully help people avoid certain pitfalls or mistakes that I've already made several times over, and so that they have more success initially than I did. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. It makes me feel important, and you know, gives me something else to put on my LinkedIn profile. So
that's great. And our last question from our audience is, how do you see youth sports, the development going forward in 2021? I mean, I hope things will get better, of course, but what are you, and it's so tough to plan. We are in the same boat planning wise, but how are you navigating? What are you thinking going forward in this year? And anyone can jump in. Any new programs that you trying to bring in, anything that is coming up that you didn't think of, let's say last year or in COVID time? We're still in COVID time. Anything new coming up?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think our future approach is going to be a blended approach, right? Taking all the learnings that we've accumulated over the last year and trying to figure out how we balance that with sort of our in-person programming. I'm optimistic that schools are going to come back in the fall, and that's going to present so many great opportunities. I know my toes crossed too. You can't see them. No, it's gonna present so many great opportunities to just re-engage kids, right? Because they need this so badly, and we know it. So I'm sort of just saying I want to get back to where we were. I want to get kids moving outdoors and in playgrounds and in gyms again. I'll be happy if we can sort of get our program back to where it was pre-COVID, frankly, and then really use that sort of virtual learning to just expand what we've been able to do and expand our reach and expand our impact.
Yep.
Yes, same here on the soccer world, where, you know, everyone's on eggshells, but everyone's ready to pivot quickly again if we have to go remote. But fingers are crossed, toes are crossed, hoping we can get as much outdoor field play as possible.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would add is I think Jane and Brian are so spot on, and Brian's mentioned about, you know, just getting the kids back on the grass fields and playing again. Yeah. I think that's the one thing we can do, and that's where we're putting our focus is, as the Rangers, as a trusted leader in at least the hockey world, right? How do we play a role in building back consumer confidence? How do we get parents and kids feeling comfortable getting back into the ice rinks and back out of the house? And how do we make sure that our rink partners and our recreational partners have the tools and resources they need? Because we all know how strapped they are for budgets now and resources. How do we help prepare them for a return to whatever the new normal is? I think that's something that we all are paying attention to right now, is how do we play a role in helping people get comfortable getting out of the house and back into sports, because it's going to be needed, but it's not going to be like a light switch goes off and everybody just like runs outside and starts playing again. And people are going to be nervous, and there's going to be anxieties, and what we can do to reduce those anxieties, and as trusted leaders in our spaces, how do we get that confidence back? I think that's something we're all going to have to pay attention to and play an active role in.
Right. Well, I'm very confident that you guys will do an amazing job this year. I mean, I've heard so much, and I'm super impressed of what you have been doing at this time, and what, you know, you're continuing to help the youth develop with so many new initiatives, and the way you're just dealing with it. It's super amazing. This is all from me, and thank you for being here. I'm gonna pass it to Gustavo for some final remarks, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Helena. And I want to thank again Jane, Rick, Brian for taking the time to be here, and our audience for listening. We could speak the whole day about sports, but yeah, we want to thank you so much. And for our listeners out there, tomorrow we want you to tune in at our award ceremony at 6:15. Tune in to our Facebook page. This is our annual ceremony awards. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks again, everybody, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you.